Hello and welcome back to From the BOLN, the Burnley podcast. I'm Simon Evans. With me, Chris Bowden and Darren Bentley. And this is the debrief for Manchester City 5, Burnley 1. Or is it? I think we talked quite a bit in the rapid reaction about that performance. We will touch upon it. But we want to look a little bit at this stage of the season. That tough start is sort of behind us now. And really, in a lot of ways, the season starts here. What have we learned so far? What have we got ahead of us? What are our rivals doing? And just try and sort of sum up where we find ourselves at this stage of the season, one game away from going into that October international break. Let's start off a little bit, though, with that City performance, because, Chris, you weren't able to join us on the rapid reaction yesterday. What is your not-so-rapid reaction to that performance?
Well, I think I once wrote after, let's say, all those games at the Etihad blur into one now for me, because it's usually 5-0 or 5-1 maybe. But I wrote after a cup tie a few years ago that we were so passive. Well, it was Sean Dyche was in charge, and we were so passive. And I just sort of posed the question, with it being a cup tie, whether we couldn't just have a swing, because we were going to City around that time, banking in, not getting in their half, and still getting beat 5, and either way. So it was just one of those. If for a cup tie, we might as well, let's just try and have a go, sort of thing. And it doesn't matter what you do, does it? Because Burnley have gone there. They've got a mix, really. They've banked in, they've defended well. They've actually had a spell where they've done very well on the counter and created 2 or 3. Without testing Donnarumma overly, they've created situations that could have led to, far better outcomes for us. But it just doesn't matter, does it? No matter how well you play, you're going to get banjoed in the end, and it is heartbreaking, because you just wonder what the point is, because the City will bring on another elite player and so on and so forth. I mean, Estev's getting stick left, right, and centre. I actually thought he did well over the piece. Haaland's been kept quiet, but Estev's put through his own goal, unfortunately, twice, and Haaland walks away with 2 goals. It's a cruel game sometimes. It's never a 5-1 in a million years.
No, it didn't. And watching the game, you didn't think we're getting battered here. But there's always that feeling, isn't there, Daz, that it is that gap in quality is going to show itself at some stage over 90 minutes. And you try doing different things. And I think the way Parker set the team up was pretty defensive. But that spell when we played well, we did move the ball about very well. But in the end, in these games, I'm all right, Liverpool, it came down to a penalty, but so often that technical ability that they have just seems to, it doesn't matter in that sense how well you set yourself up. Just delays the inevitable in some respects.
You go and play these superpowers and you play 90 minutes of football, and in the end, the superpowers win. And 99 times out of 100, that's the case. We've had the odd situation, haven't we, at Arsenal, at Liverpool, at Manchester United. We've picked those results up in the past with, I don't know, with some battle-hardened teams, but with battle-hardened displays, I think. And the odd bit of flair here and there. Don't get me wrong, Stephen Defoe's free kick at Manchester United will be forever etched in folklore. But it's so hard against these sides. You could, as Chris says, you can try anything you want. You can try throwing attack at them. You can try throwing 9 in defence. It really doesn't matter. In the end, they find a way through you. And we'll get into this, as well as we Burnley have played, we are exactly where I and many others expect him to be. Being competitive in games, but it's not enough against the big guys. And as you said at the start, Simon, that's the nature of the beast. But draw the line now. We've got some games coming up. The season starts now in every way.
We have had a tough start in terms of fixtures, the toughest of the 3 promoted teams, I think it's fair to say.
By a distance.
And we've now got games coming up that we're looking at in terms of getting points from, aren't we? And fixtures coming up, we've got a trip to Villa Park before the international break. That's a sort of away game where, yes, you're not favourites, but you're going into that one thinking, can you get a point out of it? You've got Leeds United at home, becomes like that Sunderland game, one of those must winners. And then Wolves away, which again is a game where you're hoping to put points on the board, and maybe even 3 from a game like that, given Wolves' tendencies this season. But it does feel, Chris, now that this is crunch. If those are 3 defeats, we're in deep trouble, aren't we? So this is a really crucial spell.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't afford to be losing those games. No, that would be, like sort of setting the tone, really. But it's, I think we're. Did I expect us to beat Sunderland? You certainly hope you do, but I thought that was a terrific performance overall. And I'm given Sunderland's, they've gone into that game so buoyant after the opening day, and we'd lost at Spurs. So throw the Forest point into the mix, which I think we're arguably ahead of where a few might have predicted we might have been points wise. It's nobody expects us to get anything against Spurs, City, United, Liverpool, and like I say, you mean Villa? Why not? It's, you can have a swing at Villa. Villa have had their issues. I watched them Thursday against Bologna, and I've watched a bit of them this afternoon. They're starting to find the net ominously, but they have their issues. I think you look at their transfer dealings haven't been as effective as they have been, and the PSR problems, etc. And I think you can get at them, and we've shown a couple of years ago under Vincent we were terribly unfortunate not to come away with a point from Villa Park. I say Leeds. Leeds to me is I wouldn't say it's a must win. I think you make sure, very much like last season, we don't lose to Leeds United.
You see, I don't agree with that, Chris. If you're not beating Leeds at home, you're going down, I think.
But in an ideal world, absolutely, you win the game. But the worst case scenario, you do not lose to them. I don't think at this stage of the season it's the worst result in the world. But if you don't lose to Leeds, they don't pull away from you, etc. So, and Wolves, I watched Wolves last night, and they've lost every game bar last night. They could have very well got all 3 points at Spurs. They looked a handful at times. Wolves. They've got some technically gifted lads. They've got power and pace. They've just given the manager a new deal, despite having lost their first 4 or 5 games. So that's no gimme. I'm not talking them down. The way we play, if we can keep things tight at the back, be all organised, disciplined as we have done, and we've shown a bit of nous in piecing together attacks when we've had the opportunity in games. It's just taking chances. Get your noses in front against any of those sides. You've a chance of holding on to it, I think. If we'd have got it. So it's, can we get the first goal in games? We did against Sunderland. Had Sunderland scored first against us at the turf in the first 5 minutes, it might have been a different game altogether. But if get your noses in front, give yourself a chance in games.
Yeah, it does. The reason why I say I think it's a must win is if you're looking down that league table and saying where are we picking up points, and we write off all these games against the top 5 or 6 teams, and we're not expecting to beat Manchester United, who aren't one of the top 5 or 6 anymore, and those category of teams, then we're left with having to win these games. That's where the margin's so fine in this, isn't it? That if you look at everything in a total rational, logical sense, we're in the bottom 3 and we're going down. So we've got to pull off some upsets somewhere, but build those on top of wins in games where maybe the odds are slightly more balanced.
I'm completely with you. I hear what Chris is saying in terms of don't lose it, because you're widening the gap between you and potentially another relegation candidate in Leeds by another 3 points. But Leeds is a game like Sunderland that we have to win at home. We have to pick 3 points up. Those bottom 8, bottom 9 clubs are where our season lies, in picking points up against them. And in those bottom 8 or 9 clubs at the minute, you've got Newcastle, and you've got Man United, and you've got Everton. Those are sides that historically are just going to be bigger and stronger than you. So you've then got to win the games against your Brentfords, against your Villas, against your West Hams, your Wolves, your Leeds United, all over halfway up the table at the minute. I think we have to win that game, because with the best will in the world, those 3 away games against Villa, Wolves, West Ham, how many points are we looking at from them? An absolute best case scenario, I would suggest probably 4. But a best case scenario. So if you don't beat Leeds, that's 5 points from your next 4 games. That gets you to 9. You know, you're borderline now. You know, that's a quarter of the season gone. That's a quarter of your season after those 4 games. So wins are everything in this league. Back-to-back wins are even more, you know, they are hostages, aren't they? If you get back-to-back wins in this league, that really shoots you up. But you've got to pick up those 3 points from your home games because getting them on the road is so difficult in the Premier League.
And when you look at the league, Chris, and we've seen it in those years. I mean, you've sat there and watched and analysed us when we have overcome the odds and survived in this division. Those wins change the mood so quickly, don't they? And the players aren't that different from fans. They feel it as well. They have those emotions as well. You know, these tough starts, the reason why your heart sort of sinks when you see the fixtures is you start to get used to losing, don't you? You start to feel like, here we go. And these games now are the chance to sort of shift that a little bit and give them some belief that, yeah, we are as good as, if not better than Wolves. And we'll find out whether we are or not. But that's what can sort of change the mood about the team. I mean, you must have seen that belief in a side when it's gone and beaten teams on the road like they did under Dash.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you can remember that first season in under Sean in the top league. I don't think we won in the first 9 or 10 games, something like that. But then we beat Hull, I think it was. Barnsley come into the equation for Jutkovic and scored a late winner. And then we went to Stoke the week after and won 2-0. And obviously, I mean, at the end of that season, we got relegated. But like I say, that bounce it gives you, we sort of went on a little bit of a run, and we got a draw at Manchester City within all that, and you know, up to Christmas did all right. But it doesn't matter how you get these wins. Doesn't matter who. I mean, it's nice to beat the rivals in and around you, but I mean, we stayed up in. So was it 2016-17? We won 10 home games, and you know, only got the 1 away win all season. You know, it doesn't matter where you get them, how you get them.
No, different ways to skin a cat.
You get your 36 points, and that should see you. Can we win another 8 or 9 games and draw, you know, between 5 and 8, something like that? It's a massive ask. But then again, you know, can we beat Brentford at home? Of course we can. Can we beat Fulham at home? Of course we can. Can we beat Wolves at home? Yeah. It's just like, we've got to give ourselves a chance. And by what Scott Parker's done, he's kept us in games, and we've shown we can nick a goal or 2 here as well. It's, you know, Jadon Anthony. Wow, you know, I mean, he's been an element. He scored a fabulous goal against Sunderland. I think his other 3 have all had a bit of element of fortune along the way.
But he's
been
in there.
Exactly, he's in the right position. He snips a goal. I mean, it was a super pullback from Hartman there. He sort of killed the City defence there. But everyone's chucking Jadon Anthony in their fantasy teams, aren't they? You know, he'll be a cheap buy, and he's a success story. And I think he's a lot that people had a bit of, you know, he got a bit of stick come his way last year. He isn't a finished product, and he's getting to that stage where he needs to start becoming that, you know, mid to late 20s. And but I thought he'd prosper at this level. And I think I'm thrilled to see him doing well. You know, it's magic. I love those little success. Josh Laurent, you know, coming in. Nobody thought he'd be playing every other week in the Premier League. Journeyman Football League player, and there's a spirit and togetherness about this bunch that we've said before. They're not going to roll over. They didn't roll over yesterday. You know, it might look that way on paper, but. There's something about this group that can keep us in games, and that you know, they got that tough chin, haven't they? That jaw.
I'll tell you what compounds the start to the season we've had. You touched on it there a little bit, Simon, at the start with your question about momentum. The start to the season we had, as in the opposition we faced, it's a double whammy because not only do we have that tough opposition, but you then throw in a couple of international breaks, and suddenly you're playing 2 or 3 home games in a month, and if you're not winning, you haven't won for a month. And it's not like the Championship where you bounce back on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, you lose on the Saturday, you bounce back on the Tuesday, Wednesday, you pick up 3 wins on a row in a week. In the Premier League, you have a week to stew on every defeat. And then you have 2 games and another international break. And it's not really until you get to sort of mid-November, when we get that international break out of the way, where you start getting into any sort of sequence of ready games. It's so hard to build up any momentum when you're a side at the foot of the league.
Mm.
You just can't get the wins back to back because of the level of opposition you're playing. And then you're playing catch-up with compounded with the start we've had and the teams we've played. So it's so difficult. And that's why it's a real double whammy, I think, at the start of the season, because of that tough 6-7 games, throwing a couple of international breaks, and you're right behind the 8 ball.
Which is why I don't quite understand that attitude we saw in midweek, not to open that Pandora's box again. But in the cup, when you've got those big gaps and those good breaks, and you've got a chance to beat somebody, and for players to score goals and players to have good performances, why throw that away? That still doesn't make sense to me. And I think it does feed into like the mood that there is around the fans today, that it's like we've just had a week where we've lost to Cardiff City and then been battered by Man City on paper. Well, actually, for, at least half of that game against Manchester City, we gave, I think, one of our better displays against them. Certainly that end of the first half where we're popping about, 1-touch, 2-touch passes and looking technically, on a level of a side that could get a result against City. But it gets all mixed up now with the Cardiff defeat and with that, and then the pressure starting to build. I mean, I'm curious, Daz, just to go back to you. You were around that team that pulled it off, seeing them going into the training ground and so on. As fans, we go through this roller coaster, don't we? We feel on a high after we beat Sunderland. We can do it. The Liverpool United games give us real belief, and then a game like that City one yesterday sort of knocks us in the stomach. Players have got to keep on a level somehow, but in reality, when they walk in on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning, there must be some sort of mood. Can you pick it up when you're around them at the training ground, whether they've been impacted by results?
Your tone for that, I mean, I can only speak from previous managers. I can't speak for Parker or company because I've not been around, but the manager sets the tone, and if he comes in on a Monday morning and it's chest out, shoulders back, let's go again, boys, people tend to fall in line, especially when you've got soldiers and lieutenants in your team who'll run through brick walls for your manager. And that's the way it tends to be. When we had that season under Dutch where we got to Europe, it was just incredible. You were coming off game. You were going into every game thinking the bubble will burst this week. It'll burst this week. And they went again. And they went again. And if you're losing games, contrasted to that, if you're losing games, you're at the bottom of the league. I tell you never saw in Dutch. You never saw that and that. He was there. He was level all the time. And that's probably what you need, somebody to just be a level head. And the players will probably follow that suit. And the captains and the leadership groups that they have in the dressing rooms these days will be the same. It's like, forget about that. And they know, the players will know exactly what we're talking about now. They'll be talking about. We've had them 6-7 games now. Look at that level of opposition. We've been competitive. We've been in games. They'll be accentuating all the positives. And they'll be saying now themselves, they'll have these next 4 fixtures pinned on the wall. And it's like, this is a target now. We've got to just do an extra 5%, an extra 10%, whatever it takes to get some points on the board in the next few games. But it's all set from the top, I think. If the manager comes in and he's, as I said, he's positive and his shoulders back and he's revving his troops up, then everyone falls into line behind that. And Parker seems to me to be a little bit Dyche-like in that he's level-headed. Doesn't seem to be a very emotional man. He seems to be a very level-headed man. And I think that will stand him in good stead, I think, in the dressing room.
Yeah, I get the impression he's emotional in a sort of sensitive way. I think he does get involved in it. But I agree, he doesn't. You don't have these. His post-match interviews are never like, euphoric or despondent.
There's no volatility there at all. He's another one. I mean, I know managers will always accentuate the positives, but there's reason to accentuate the positives, I think, and he's got a genuine belief that this group is so tight-knit. He talked about it so many times, hasn't he? That I think that'll stand in good stead. And we're coming into that little group of games now, as I said. We know we have to act and we have to pick some points up. Villa away is a tough game. Don't get me wrong. They've just picked up their first win today. But you've got Villa, you've got West Ham, and you've got Wolves. They've got 2 wins between them, those 3 teams. So there is an opportunity. There is chinks in the armour. And we have to exploit that.
it's such a tight division, isn't it? As well, we can make sort of sweeping comments about the likes of Brentford, and then they go and get a great win, and it's, you can start dismissing a Fulham, and then they pull off a fantastic victory somewhere. It's incredibly tough division. But just going on that sort of mood thing, Chris, I mean, you look at someone like Amorim at Manchester United, and he's almost the polar opposite of what Daz is talking about there, isn't he? And Parker does seem to have, and he seems to have a good leadership group around him. We see that on the field, I think, a bit, don't we, with players like Cullen and Walker. There does seem to be a solid group there who will keep everyone's focus on the fact that this has been a really tough start to the season, but like, here we go now, and we're good enough, and there's been good enough signs. I mean, if you were going through the video, if you're sitting down during the international break with the players who are left and saying, let's look at what's happened so far, there's plenty of highlights and spells in games to show them that would give you hope and belief, no?
No, yeah, very much so, very much so. Like I say, Amorim's demeanour. I mean, he's been so much of our lives is on social media. We talked about the at Grimsby the way he was. The people mocked him with his tactic board, and he couldn't watch the penalties. When have you ever seen a situation where Scott Parker could be ridiculed on social media? Not that it's important, but he doesn't rant and rave. Like I say, he doesn't come out. The only time I've ever seen anything clipped up of him is at Fulham. Someone did the streets to a bit of a diatribe he had, didn't he, after the playoff final that time. So he doesn't get carried away one way or another. If we'd have won yesterday, he'd have been the same demeanour. I think we're very lucky to have him, to be honest. I say he's got this group. I say you could pick any one of a number of them to be your skipper, couldn't you? You want leaders all over the park, and we've got that. Your keeper's a leader for an off. Walker's a leader. Cullen's a leader. Laurent's a leader. Estev's developing into that sort of character, isn't he? He's. I like the look of Hartman. I don't know if he's vocal or anything on the pitch, but he's. You want him in the trenches with you, don't you? That sort of type. We've got these players now who are going to dig in, and they're not going to get blown over. They're not going to, throw one in every other week, to quote another Burnley manager from the past, sort of thing. But geez, no, there are a lot to be pleased about. A lot to, and that's another word we used to hear about. The narrative. I haven't heard anything about Burnley. I've not seen any footage. We didn't even get a mention on Match of the Day after the Forest game last week. They didn't even speak about us. But that's so nobody's. They probably look at yesterday and think they've been hammered. Typical newly promoted side, but nobody's really got a feel probably on how we're actually doing within these games, sort of thing. And it's probably good for us in a way. Just to go back to that. You're watching that. We ultimately get a point, don't we, against Liverpool, but for the penalty. You see have you seen the one this afternoon in Fulham, the Fulham Villa game? Josh King smashes it against Matty Cash's elbow. It's on target. It's troubling the goalkeeper. No penalty. Cash's back's turned. And you're thinking, well, the punishment for smashing a ball from the same distance away against Hannibal's a penalty from 12 yards out. And Villa get away with that one. You think, just a bit of consistency in result in decision taking.
But you're never going to get that. With all consistency, decision making is out the window now, and VAR's had a lot to do with that. But going back to what we're saying about Parker and the faith he has in the players, I think you're right. He's got a lot of faith in his squad. I'm just not sure he's got enough depth in his squad. I think once we get past that first 11, I'm not sure there's a lot there. And Cardiff was a little microcosm of that. And there's individuals, we touch on Marcus Edwards, we can touch on Ogochukwu, we can touch on a few players on there, Breuer, who still is a bit of an enigma. But is there strength in depth in that squad, which you're going to need over 38 games to get you out the mire? Or is he going to have to gas them 11 to go time and time and time again?
I think it's the latter, isn't it? I mean, it really feels like that to me because, yesterday when JBL comes on, and I must admit, I hadn't looked at the bench when the team came out. I just looked to see, what he'd done with the starting 11, and I'm like, I'd forgotten about JBL. I forgot, and suddenly he's on, and he didn't get into the game at all. The pace of the game sort of, and don't get me wrong, it's not easy coming down against City as a sub when you've just gone behind as well. But he's another of those players, and we seem to have a lot of those players in that squad who just aren't quite there. They're not bad footballers, and you can't say they're a terrible signing or anything, but they're just not. They don't feel to be quite there. And I think if this season is going to be a success, 2 or 3 of those have to prove me wrong in that sense. And someone like Fleming is to come along and be a Premier League player. Someone like JBL is to come along and be a Premier League. Bashir Humphries is to step up and become a Premier League player. Then we've got a squad of 17 or 18. We haven't at the moment. It feels like we have a squad of 12, really, of realistic options.
Let's say Humphries is a real potential there. Is he going to get a run at this level? Unless Esteve gets an injury, suspension, probably not for the minute. But you look at the right back situation. People have written off Son after a couple of cup appearances. He's an international footballer. Just let him get. Should we lose Kyle Walker, God forbid? You've got Connor Roberts there. Connor Roberts can do a job. You've got Oliver Son. Yeah, I do think, I said we touched on this before, Worrell's played most of his career in the Championship. I think he's a good Championship centre-half. I'm not convinced of him at this level. He's not got the pace. But so you've Humphries in that area. There might be one short at centre-half. Perez again, he's untried, isn't he, at this level? But you can go through them all. Yeah, but midfield unit, I'm happy with. Yeah, but
at the top end, we've touched on it so many times. We haven't got the goals in this squad. January is going to be a big
mistake in the window. I think
we're going to need a striker in the window. Barnesy isn't going to step up. Well, love Barnesy to bits. We all do, but Barnesy isn't the answer. It's increasingly becoming apparent Breuer probably isn't the answer. Which leaves Fleming and Foster.
I'll take Dwight McNeil on loan from Everton.
Well, yeah. Creativity is everything, but we're not short of wingers either, are we?
No, it's the person getting on the end of him. I still think we should have signed Vardy. I think he gets goals in some of those little fine margin games. Someone like Vardy who can just pop up out of nowhere and stick one in the top corner. But Humphries is an interesting one because I think of that group, he's the one who you would look at on the basis of what he did last season and think, yeah, he could take the step up to the Premier League. And we're playing a system of 3 centre-halves at the moment, and one of them is a midfielder in Josh Laurent, who I don't think has done anything wrong. But if you're looking at Humphries, I'm thinking he could come into a 3, and I know that would give you 2 left-sided central defenders, but if Esteve's the middle of them and Humphries is the left, and he could go into midfield in the way that we've seen Laurent do a few times, he's not a defender who doesn't want to go outside his own half. I mean, is that an option that you'd look at? And I mean, what changes could you make, Daz, to that 11 where you'd think like that would probably make it stronger?
It's a really tricky one because we have to be more proactive in the middle and forward thirds. But if he's set upon this 5 at the back, it restricts that greatly, doesn't it?
It does.
Ogashoku's sat there. We've got Ogashoku, we've got Florentino, we've got Cullen, and we've got Laurent, who we all thought were 4 players vying for 2 positions.
Hannibal.
And Hannibal's probably a little bit different in that he probably plays a bit more positively, a bit more wide, maybe he's a 10, whereas none of the others are really a 10, are they, or a winger. So I'll keep Hannibal out of that quartet for that reason. But if he's going to persist with a 5 and the 2 holding midfielders, we're reliant on those 2 wide men playing a little bit narrower and Foster holding up and getting those into play. Now, so far, we've scored goals. We have scored goals, so it's not been too big an issue. It's when you come up against the big sides and it's hard to break them down, isn't it? But I don't know whether we can persist with 5 at the back. It'll keep us tight. Should keep us tight against the lesser sides. But by doing that, we lose a little bit the attacking edge, and we're not exactly blessed with that to start with. So you might have to go back to 4.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it does let the fullbacks get forward, and we saw that yesterday, even at City. Hartman and Walker were really getting forward a lot, and they're not doing that if you're playing in a 4. But it does leave you then with an awful lot of weight on Jadon Anthony and Chouamani to create something out of nothing, really. What do you think of that system, Chris? I mean, I feel like I quite like it, but when we're coming against in a must-win game against Leeds United, I'm thinking, do I want that system?
Well, I think you probably looked at the side against Forest, and I was watching them warm up, and they warmed up in a 4. I think for him to line up then with the 3 centre halves was a bit of a concern, and there seems to be people think that like Forest were there for the taking, and we should have gone for the jugular really. But I wouldn't mind if you're going to play like I say like Laurent deeper and let him play just in front of 2 centre halves and let him drop in as and when required.
Like
So
a reverse
rather
swing.
than the right of 3 centre backs.
Mm.
So it's I say he's done it. I mean he's done ever so well because he's given you underlapping runs, overlapping runs. He's not just sat in as a third centre half.
No.
He's pushed into that midfield unit. But I'd probably look at playing Ugachukwu in there, give you a bit more going forward. But he's also got the legs to get in and fill gaps in front of a back 4. I think.
I mean, it did feel yesterday, Daz, that Ugachukwu was a victim of that system in the sense that if you're playing a more traditional 4-4-2, Ugachukwu in that midfield somewhere, but in that five-man defence, that he doesn't fit in ahead of Cullen or Florentino into midfield. But we want him on the field; he brings a lot.
Yeah, 3 into 2 just don't go in that system. Those 3 into 2 in midfield just don't go, or else you are totally blunting your attacking edge. So it is a little conundrum for him. That's why I feel in the end, it might be needs must, and we might need points on the board, but he's going to have to, I think, some stage go back to a 4 to get another attacking player on the field. Whether that's getting an Ugachukwu further forward, whether it's pushing Hannibal into a 10 or getting Fleming on the pitch, because we all think Fleming can play as a 10. We keep saying that. He's not having much opportunity to do it, though, is he? He's either playing as a 9 or he's warming the bench.
Mm.
But I do think he's going to have to change that system at some stage. And you're right, Sam. Home games, especially against lesser teams, and even going away to the lesser teams, would probably need to be a little bit braver in our team selections.
I think so. Yeah. Let's wrap up with this one then. We've sort of looked at this as a little segment, as a sort of way of closing off this difficult start. In terms of emotion, as a Burnley fan, Chris, do you think now that you've seen signs there that we can stay up?
I've seen signs that we can. My only concern is are the 3 that aren't as good as us, and I see their performances and results, and I think there's enough there to keep us in the bottom 3 as it stands at the moment. But that is on the back of 1 win in the opening 5 games, even granted the caliber of opposition we've played. I thought Wolves were seriously in danger, and then I see them last night, and I thought they were very good. West Ham have, as we suspected, have changed their manager. They might be a different proposition altogether now. They might be harder to break down, etc. But beyond that, I think the others have just got enough. I think, haven't they? I've just looked at Brentford's and the Fulhams, and Brentford's are going to be fine, aren't they?
I don't know. It's a long season, isn't it? I just think I think it's, when people say the league's got better, I think it has got a lot better, the quality of all the teams. I think it's way harder to do what Parker's trying to do than what it was to do 6 or 7 years ago. I do, because the quality's just got better of those middle ranking teams. You see the signing players for 40 million and so on. But I just got the feeling it's going to be one of those topsy-turvy seasons where teams are going to have a bad month and get drawn into it, and then they're going to bounce back, and I think there's going to be a lot of surprises this year. But Daz, same question to you. Is one of those surprises us staying up? Have you seen enough to give you a glimmer of hope? Because you predicted at the start that we weren't going to be good enough, didn't you?
I am a naturally optimistic person, but I have never been as confident in my life that we haven't got enough in the locker. We just haven't got enough in the locker. I just think against the bigger sides, we're not quite there. We never have been quite there against the bigger sides, have we really? But I just don't see clean sheets in this side. I don't see a run of clean sheets. And if we're not getting clean sheets, we need 2 to win a game. Have we got 2 goals in us in enough game to win games? I'm not sure we have. Unless something happens in January and we bring some goal scorer in from whoever it might be, or Fleming steps up. No, I don't think we've got enough about us. But that's not to say we'll not be competitive and we'll not be in every game. I think, as a lot of people are saying, I'm enjoying this season a lot more than the company season, because I feel like this side's really putting sweat on the shirt. It feels like a team we can get behind. We touched on a few elements there: strength in depth, goal scoring ability, lack of clean sheets. I think all them catch up with you over the season, and I don't think we'll have enough.
I do think we have to correct things in January to give ourselves any chance. I think that end of that window, I was pretty confident I thought they're going to bring a striker in. Royer can't be the only striker they bring in this summer. I was convinced that they would do that. They didn't, and I thought another centre-half was important as well. And we have ended up, playing these opening 5 games with Ekdal and Josh Laurent as the 2 of the central defence, which no one would have expected if we'd have discussed on the summer podcasts that we did. I think we have to address those 2 areas that weren't addressed in that window. If we can just be in touch, still in the bottom 3, but still in touch when that next window opens, and we can bring in a striker. I know there's no magical, mythical, proven 20 goals a season man coming to Burnley halfway through the season, but somebody who can get on the end of something in 5 or 6 games and make the difference of 10 points. That's that kind of player is out there, perhaps. And a central defender who can come in and just bring a bit of steel and be alongside Esteve there and give Parker more of a reassurance that he can play 2 centre-halves and get another body into the final third. Then I think the second half of the season could be different. But we're to get to that point in January without it slipping out of our grip. But that's the thing. I do have enough confidence that it's not going to run away from us before then.
Yeah,
and then let's go and make those additions. Make those additions in January, and they will be investments well worth making, because if we can stay in this league for another year, the economics of it all change. We can build on something then. So let's hope so. But it's tough, isn't it? And it's tough when you're talking about it every week to sort of try and keep yourself up as a fan as well. But I think there's been little signs there, and the sign, Ugachukwu and Florentino. I think Hartman. I think there's some good signings that have moved us up a notch. But let's see. We'll be back with you to preview that game at Villa later in the week, as always. Until then, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thanks to Chris and Daz for coming along for this discussion. I think we got some real talk there. And up the Clarets.